What is up, guys? Londrick here, and now I'm back with another Q&A session. This time it's Wrestling 1995. I'm sure you know how this one works. I put the video out, you ask the questions, I give the answers. So just going to tell you now, next Q&A is going to be out 2017. So just stay tuned and I'll put that announcement up when I put it up, and then we'll probably do that video in early December. Yeah, so but that's 2017, this is 1995, so let's get to it. First question is Hitman Fan 683. Best promotion in 1995? Oh, gotta be ECW for me, definitely. I mean, I've not really seen any of the Japanese promotions that year, but especially for the US, it has to be ECW. At a time when the WWF and WCW were so cartoonish, stupid, behind the times and all that, ECW was building a revolution. I mean, I think 1995 is my favourite year for ECW. I feel like just some of the stuff we got that year was amazing. Such as the Raven Tommy Dreamer feud started that year. That was just incredible. You had characters like the Sandman, the Ultimate Underdog in Mikey Whipwreck, and then this is the year I feel like Heyman was really adding to the ECW formula with three big moves, really, two big moves, really. First, it happened in late 1994, but they were prominent throughout most of 1995. Bringing in Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, and then specifically the Malenko-Guerrero feud. I mean, for ECW, which is built on violence, blood, and all that, weapons, barbed wire, baseball bats, tables, Eddie Guerrero and Dean Malenko just went out there and wrestled. So, and guess what? The ECW fans loved it. So, and I really do feel like they were having the best matches in the world at that point overall. And then after that, of course, when Eddie Benoit Malenko went for WCW, he brought in the Luchadors, Rey Mysterio Jr., Psychosis, Juventud Guerrera, and then particularly Rey and Psychosis having Lucha Libre style matches in ECW. So I think that was a year Paul Heyman was really expanding the product, trying new things, and it was awesome. And I think what he did a great job of was making ECW different. That was the key. I think that was the key to ECW's success. It wasn't the same product you were getting with the WWF or WCW. And I feel like it's kind of what Lucha Underground tried to do a couple of years ago. I think for me that's the key if you're going to be a new promotion making your name. You've got to present a totally different product to the WWE. You've got to give fans a totally different product, because if your product's like the WWE, it's going to come across as WWE light, so why would people watch it? And so I think Heyman was pretty smart as fuck in that regard. And of course, there was a lot of great stuff in ECW. I mean, the Tasmania became Taz. That was fucking awesome. You had people like Too Cold Scorpio, the Public Enemy, Axel and Ian Rotten in a Taipei death match. Just some great stuff. So it's got to be that one. Then we got best slash worst WCW pay-per-views. Yeah, then in brackets to make this a little bit harder for me. For WWF, neither King of the Ring or WrestleMania. So for the WWF, I'll say best, obviously Survivor Series. That was a great show. That's probably to this day one of my favourite Survivor Series shows of all time. Especially at the time when the company was struggling. They knocked it out of the park here. This is of course headlined by a classic no-holds-barred match main event between Bret Hart and Diesel for the WWF Championship. Love that match, but we've also got stuff on here like the Wildcard Survivor Series match, where the concept was faces and heels were on the same team and they had to coexist, and it was really cool concept actually, I thought. Anyway, you had if I remember right, it was Shawn Michaels, British Bulldog, Sid and Ahmed Johnson against a team of Razor Ramon, Dean Douglas, Yokozuna and Owen Hart. Then of course we had a really underrated opener as well, with the Underdogs versus the Body Donners, an All Japan Women's 8-man tag. So they brought girls from All Japan Women's promotion to come in, like Oshi Kong and all that. That was pretty cool. So yeah, overall I loved that show. So worst, if you discount King of the Ring and WrestleMania, In Your House Great White North in October 1995. Yeah, that was a bad show. Reviewed it on the channel before. There was one pretty good match on there with Razor Ramona 1-2-3 Kid versus Smoking Guns, but Diesel and the British Bulldog was a bad main event. Yeah, was this the one with Yokozuna and Mabel, I think? I'm pretty sure, yeah, it must have been, because Yoko main evented their triple header show, so one of the worst pay-per-view matches of all time there. I think we had Savio Vega versus Waylon Mercy on this show. Yeah, just a bad show overall. WCW, so worst. I haven't actually seen the entire show, so, but from what I've read and all, it's got to be uncensored. Yeah, that was a bad show apparently. I mean, I've not actually seen it all, but it does seem like total shit. And best and fittingly the biggest show of the year, Starrcade 1995 was an awesome show. I thought that was a fantastic show. I mean, it was built around an interesting concept of WCW versus New Japan. So 7 matches for the World Cup of Wrestling, and there's some really interesting gems on there. I mean, you had Chris Benoit versus Jushin Liger, Alex Wright versus Koji Kanemoto. That was really good match actually. Lex Luger versus Masahiro Chono. This is kind of weird now, knowing that this guy's actually still wrestling in New Japan. But Randy Savage versus Hiroshi Tenzan, like that is actually mental now to think about. That Tenzan's still wrestling, and he wrestled Randy Savage on a pay-per-view in WCW 22 years ago. Oh, I just completely forgot who Sting wrestled on that show. Bastard. Was this Kensei Sasaki, maybe? I can't remember. Then, obviously, Eddie Guerrero, Shinjiro Otani. That was a great match. But then we had what a gem this match was, actually. Triangle match. Ric Flair, Sting, Lex Luger. And the winner of that match got to face Randy Savage in the main event, which is Ric Flair. And then Ric Flair, I believe it was his 12th world title that he won that night. So, yeah, that was really, really awesome. Good stuff. Then what have we got? What would have helped Kevin Nash to a better title run? So, I think, first one, I think he would have made a much better heel world champion than a babyface world champion. Because obviously you won't remember because you weren't alive then, but people who were around then, you recall, Diesel got over by being a cool, silent badass. He just had this coolness badass. He had this coolness factor behind him when he was Shawn Michaels' bodyguard and all that. Then he started getting pushed as a wrestler. Then they just pushed him as this dominant badass. There was just something cool about him, and that's what got him over. And then, this sounds familiar, then when he won the title, he started being a lame, goody two-shoes babyface. And it just didn't work. It wasn't really him. Yeah, and it was behind the times as well. So, then obviously if you remember, after he lost the title, then he got back to this tweener badass phase. So I would say, if the Diesel after he lost the title till he left the company in 1996, I feel like if that Diesel was the WWF champion, he would have done a hell of a lot better. And also, because the problem was, also the bad opponents needed better opponents, because the formula was he was a big man, he was one of the big men in to fight Diesel. Problem was though, the matches were so limited, like Diesel versus Sid, and especially Diesel versus Mabel, because here's the thing, right? By his own admission, Kevin Nash, very limited worker, only has a handful of moves, and mostly high impact power moves. So you got like your jackknife, your side slam, snake eyes, that sort of thing. So then he's facing Mabel, who's over 500 pounds. He can't really do any of his moves to him. So what kind of match are you going to have, really? I mean, if you limit Nash like that, and then obviously you put him in there with the smaller guys like Bret and Shawn. As a babyface, it's hard for the fans to get behind Diesel because they sympathise with the smaller man getting beat up by the big man. So yeah, I feel like heel running just better opponents really would have made Diesel's run a hell of a lot better. Worst Dungeon of Doom member. From awful, but I guess the Zodiac, because he was the one that was the most out of place. Not that he was necessarily the worst member of the group. It was just the one who looked the most ridiculous, in my opinion. I mean, for years and years he'd been Brutus the Barber Beefcake there. This happy-go-lucky baby face. And obviously WCW couldn't use Brutus the Barber Beefcake gimmick because it's copyrighted by the WWF. And he originally came in as a butcher, and then he went like totally batshit and saying Zodiac. It just looked stupid. It just really out of place. I would say Kamala was up there, but the Kamala thing kind of worked because that had been his character the whole time. So I've got to go with the Zodiac for that one. I mean, that's worst matches of the year. Wait, hold on the best matches of the year, because there's actually a question here with top 5 best match of each promotion for WF and WCW. So I'll really focus on the worst matches for this one. Then we'll get back to the best matches later on. So worst matches, you got to think Diesel versus King Mabel from SummerSlam's the one that's immediately coming to mind. Yeah, that was actually a pay-per-view main event and the second biggest pay-per-view of the year. Brilliant. WrestleMania, Undertaker, King Kong Bundy. Just behind Giant Gonzalez is the worst streak match of all time. Bad. The Yokozuna Mabel match I mentioned from In Your House Great White North. Terrible, terrible. The King of the Ring final for Mabel is Savio Vega. That was a horrific piece of shit as well. God, some bad shit this year. Allied Powers versus Blue Brothers, also from WrestleMania 11. That was pretty fucking shit. I can't really remember any bad Raw matches, although I'm sure there was. I will say it was one of the absolute worst matches of the year, but considering who was in it, it was. Bret Hart and Bob Backlund's I Quit match from WrestleMania. Oh god, that was terrible. That was definitely Bret's worst ever WWF pay-per-view match. Apart from his 2010 comeback, then WCW. The first thing I think of was the King of the Road match of Dustin Rhodes and Barry Darsow. Was he called Barry Darsow then? Or was he? I think he might have been called the Black Talk Bully then. I think. So basically, King of the Road match. They were fighting in a moving truck. Yes, an actual moving truck on the road, on the motorway and everything. And the only way to win was to get to the end of the thing and press the fucking horn. So, awful concept. Just looked bad. Obviously, Hogan Giant from Halloween Havoc, which ironic. Just reviewed that match, but yeah, it was bad. I mean, but what did you expect? Really, it was one of Giant's. Maybe it was Giant's first official match. I think he had a couple of house show matches before that. And Hogan wasn't really the guy to carry him, was he really? Hogan Vader strap match of Super Brawl. That was just booked like, huh? Really? Duggan versus Kamala from Bash at the Beach. What the hell do you expect? So, some definite bad matches that year. But we'll get back to the best ones later on. Prince of Strong Style 9 V2, which is a better promo and why. Kane, Dewey or Austin's initial promo on WCW. So both awesome promos, probably the two standout promos of 1995 for me, definitely in all the wrestling. But I'll go with the Kane Dewey one because the Austin one, while it was a great promo, it was pretty much just Austin giving his real feelings. Like, I suppose I was always going to compare it to CM Punk's pipe bomb in 2011. So Austin had been fired by WCW, and Paul Heyman had called Austin up, invited him to go to ECW just to cut promos, and then he pretty much just unleashed years of frustration, talking about how he's been treated like shit in WCW, and I think that's kind of when the light bulb went off, and he started to find himself as a character, which ultimately, a couple of years later, he took to a whole new level when he became Stone Cold Steve Austin. But I'm going to give the nod to Kane Dewey because that was pure storyline, and that was pure Mick Foley getting into character and really getting himself in the character and just cutting a great promo. Oh. It was during the Mick Foley anti-hardcore phase where that was a tremendous angle as well. Talked about an experience where he's in where he was having a match, and then he saw someone in ECW have a sign saying Kane Dewey. So obviously Dewey was Mick Foley's 3-year-old son at the time, and Kane Dewey meant, well, Sandman, Kane Dewey, so that meant Sandman hitting with the cane. And then Mick Foley just ripped right on the ECW fans for that. Oh, honestly, that Kane Dewey promo from Mick Foley, everyone has to at least see it once, because it's got to be on the short list for greatest wrestling promos of all time. I definitely think that. Because he had more experience with this year. Do you think WF in 1995 is as worse or equal to WWE in 2017? No, 95 was worse, like way worse. Not way worse, but definitely worse. I mean, obviously business was worse. Yeah, I think overall the wrestling's a lot better now than it was in 1995. Except for maybe guys like Brett and Shawn, but I would say overall the in-ring action is definitely better now. I mean, there's nowhere near as many awful pairs. I mean, you gotta look. WrestleMania 33 was a good show. WrestleMania 11 was the worst WrestleMania ever. They didn't present anything on the level of King of the Ring 1995. They weren't pushed. I mean, yeah, they have pushed some bad people, but they weren't Jinder Mahal. But they weren't pushing anyone as awful as Mabel to the top. And God, can you imagine if they actually put the title on Mabel in 1995? And of course, we're not at the stage where we're getting wrestling pirates or wrestling bin men or fucking hog farmers or whatever the fuck. Oh, there was the Fantasio as well. What the fuck was that all about? Was Battle Cat in 1995? I think he was. So the gimmicks were nowhere near as bad as they were in 1995. So I think definitely 1995 is worse than now. Thoughts on the Cactus Jack Terry Funk matches, a barbed wire match and the King of the Death matches. Oh, if you like that style of wrestling, if you like crazy hardcore stunt matches, those are the matches for you. I mean, my God, these matches are fucking batshit insane. I mean, I've only seen 2 of them. The main one, the first one, in like January of 1995 in IWA Mid-South show, just a random show. Maybe 200-300 people there. Cactus Jack and Terry Funk, and the stuff they did there just beggars belief now. I mean, it's just amazing how much they got away with. And Terry Funk was in his 50s at the time. That was fucking mental. Like, you got to appreciate the fact that you gave it that much for the sake of entertainment. I mean, wow. That's probably one of the most brutal matches I've ever seen. Definitely needs to be seen, I believe. Then, of course, the more famous one, the King of the Death match final. Not as good as the first one, but entertaining as hell. I mean, this is after a brutal night of hardcore wrestling. And let's disregard the fact that when the ring exploded, it kind of looked like shit, but these guys just gave you everything. And I think like Mick Foley's career in Japan was made when Terry Funk put him over clean. I mean, Terry Funk was a huge star in Japan, and to get a win over the Funker in Japan was no small feat at all. Obviously, you got to see these matches. They are pretty just unreal, to be fair. Then, how influential was ECW from 1995 to Eddie Malenko, Raven Dream infused many of the promo angles. I honestly feel like ECW in 1995 was a precursor to the Attitude Era. I really do. I mean, you've got to look at it. I mean, that style definitely influenced the WWF later on. Now, granted, Vince took it and made it bigger and better than ECW ever could. And I think the key for Vince, what Vince did, was took it and then made it more morally acceptable for a mainstream audience. But he definitely took some of the ECW concepts, such as realistic storylines with realistic characters such as Raven and Tommy Dreamer, the Sandman, Shane Douglas, etc. These weren't cartoon characters like you saw in the WWF and WCW. These were serious guys. I mean, yeah, some of Raven's stuff was out there, granted, but and obviously like the realistic wrestlers such as Taz. I mean, it was a place where guys who'd never got a shot in the US were getting a shot in the US. I mean, when Benoit, Eddie Malenko came in, these weren't exactly wet behind the ear rookies. These had been wrestling for years. I mean, Benoit and Guerrero had close to a decade of experience by that point. I'm pretty sure Malenko had been wrestling since like the very early 80s. Because Malenko was older than the other two. But of course, in that time, with their size, they were never going to really get a shake in the mainstream promotions of the US. I mean, I think Eddie and Malenko were about 5'6" each. Benoit a little bit bigger, about 5'8", 5'9". But obviously Benoit had a bit more muscle mass, so he was a bit heavier than the other two. But still, guys who weren't getting the breaks were getting the breaks, and then obviously introduced the US audience to the likes of Rey Mysterio Jr., Juventud Guerrera, Psychosis. WWF and WCW would never have picked these up probably, so that was cool. Yeah, and obviously, like the Attitude like promos from Cactus Jack and Steve Austin, and people like Raven and all that. As far as the Sandman goes, regular guy who drinks beer and smokes cigarettes. That was kind of a similar character to what Austin became later on, although obviously Austin became much bigger and much better than the Sandman ever could be. But I'm sure you get the point, right? So yeah, honestly, just the influence ECW had in 1995 is amazing. I mean, you look back now and maybe it doesn't look that impressive in 2017 because we've seen it all, but for what wrestling was in 1995, it's pretty revolutionary, to be honest. The next question, Deep Goal. How good is Bill Watts as WWF head booker? Well, he didn't really have long enough to make much of an impression, so pretty sure he's only there a matter of weeks. So sometime in late 1995, Vince McMahon brought Bill Watts in with the intention of letting Bill Watts run the wrestling side of things, the booking and all that, and Vince was going to concentrate on his corporate executive duties. But of course, that's never going to work because Vince McMahon's a massive control freak. I mean, he could say he wanted Bill Watts to have free reign, but that was never going to happen. Vince just couldn't let control go, and then obviously Bill Watts left like weeks later. So, but I feel he could have done a really good job. I feel like if Bill Watts, I mean, obviously, yeah, he's probably a little bit out of touch, but I feel like at that time WWF needed a more realistic approach, and I think Bill Watts would have done that. I think Bill Watts contributed to much of Survivor Series 1995, so I feel like, not saying WWF in 1996 would have been awesome if Bill Watts had been in charge, but I do feel like he could have done a lot better than he was. What do you think of Stephanie White and Barry Didinsky? I'm going to put my hands up here. I have no recollection of who the hell Barry Didinsky is. I just cannot remember him. I cannot put a name to the face at all. I have no idea who he is, to be honest with you. Stephanie White, of course, she was only there a little bit, wasn't she? I think she did WWF Mania with Todd Pettengill, and did some backstage interviewing on pay-per-views and stuff like that. She wasn't very good. I mean, I'm sure she tried her best, but I don't think she really knew anything about wrestling or stuff like that. So I don't think it was a good fit, and obviously that reflected in the fact she wasn't there very long. So, but I suppose for her, she was young at the time, and obviously WWF provided a job that she probably needed. So whatever, she just wasn't. I mean, you get a lot of people like that who are just not very good at it and don't last very long. Thoughts on Techno Team 2000? Yeah, that was pretty awful. It was Eric Watts, and for the life of me, I cannot remember the other guy in the team, but it was supposed to be a futuristic team from the year 2000. I always loved like how in the 1990s everyone was talking about the year 2000, like how the world was going to be this completely different place and all that. It was going to be futuristic and all that, but no, it was pretty much the same. They wore these stupid outfits and that, and they were just an ordinary run-of-the-mill undercard tag team. Not much to say about them, not good, not bad, just kind of filled a space on the roster. I mean, they didn't really do anything significant. They never had a pay-per-view match, for example. I don't think they were on Raw a ton either. I think they were mainly like Action Zone, Superstars, Challenge and all that sort of thing. And I don't think they lasted very long at all. I think they only lasted about 2 or 3 months maybe. So they were kind of what they were. They then fought on Bunkhouse Buck and Dirty Dick Slater as WCW Tag Team Champions. Yeah, I thought they were a good team. I like the fact they looked like old school wrestlers, just tough, rough and tough badass that are going to beat you up. Not the prettiest guys, not the flashiest guys, but the tough guys. I mean, Dick Slater had been around a long time at that point. Oh, and it was Bunkhouse Buck. Oh, I can't remember his real name. But was he the one who played Jack Swagger's dad in like 2010 or something? I'm pretty sure it was the same guy. I'm sure it was. Oh fuck, I can't remember his real name, but he was an old territory guy as well. So they were both well in the 40s at that point. I liked them anyway. Thought they were a nice contrast to the more colourful teams such as Harlem Heat and mental young teams like the Nasty Boys and that sort of thing. So then, what do you think of the Blue Bloods? So that was Regal and Bobby Eaton. Originally it was supposed to be William Regal and Triple H. It was originally Regal and Triple H or Jean-Paul Levesque. And they were going to actually apparently get a WCW Tag Team title run. But of course, 1995, Levesque's contract runs out. And he goes to WWF, becomes Hunter Hearst Helmsley. And was kind of successful, wasn't he? You got to think, yeah, that was an alright career move, I suppose, for him. Go to WWF, did things like marry the boss's daughter, now second in command of the company. So that's kind of amazing. So think about young wrestlers. Imagine 22 years ago watching Jean-Paul Levesque in WCW, thinking, you know what? 2 decades time, this guy's going to be married to the McMahon family. He's going to be the heir apparent of Vince McMahon. Mental how things that work out, and then obviously that changed to Regal and was it Bobby Eaton, but he went by the name of Earl Robert Eaton. It was alright. I do feel like they probably did deserve at least one tag team title reign, I think, but they were pretty much a mid-card feud with like Harlem Heat and all that. So probably weren't utilised to full potential in my opinion. Then we got Diesel 101 Raw. Like I told you before, I always felt the Hogan versus Savage for the WCW title should have main event at Starrcade with Savage going over clean. How do you think the buy rate would have been? Yeah, that would have been great, but you got to get Hulk Hogan to agree to that, brother. I would say, we think about how the company is, I'd say about 400,000 buys maybe. Don't think it would have been like mega stuff like they did later on when the NWO era when the company was on fire, but I feel like in between 350 and 400 was something that was probably realistic. Do you think if Undertaker faced Bam Bam Bigelow said at WrestleMania, would it have been that good? I think it would have been a good match. I don't think it would have been a great match, but I think was about a 3-star match, I would say. Yeah, 3 stars. I'll go for that. Probably would have been, obviously would have been better than Taker and Bundy. But yeah, it would have been a good match. I feel like Bam Bam would have probably brought the best out of the Undertaker at that point. So yeah, I'll probably say a 3-star match. There we go. Was Diesel not dropping the title of Bam Bam or Bulldog the biggest missed opportunity of WWE 1995? Bam Bam, no, I don't really think Bam Bam being the WWF champion was that big a deal. But I'll go with the Bulldog. I mean, I would have loved to have seen the Bulldog be the WWF champion, even if it was for 2 or 3 months in 1995. So, yeah, I think so. Anyway, for me, anyway, other people might not think so, but I definitely think they could have had a Diesel drop the title of Bulldog at maybe SummerSlam or something like that. Then Bulldog could have dropped the title of the Bret at Survivor Series, and it would have been better. But that's just my opinion. Doesn't mean it's right. Doesn't mean it's wrong. Then we got thoughts on Scott Steiner showing Big Papa Pump carrying ECW. My God, this was a total package, Scott, right here. Did he? I mean, I'm not being did he really show signs of Big Papa Pump at ECW? I'm going to have to plead ignorant here. I don't remember that or remember seeing any of that. So I'm going to have to take your word on that. I didn't see it. It's that simple. Thoughts on WWE WrestleMania the arcade game not featuring Diesel while he was a WWF champion. Yeah, that was a strange one. So WrestleMania the arcade game came out in 1995, and yeah, like you say, so this was back in the days where we didn't get a full roster on video games. I mean, you young fans probably think I'm taking the piss, but if you had 10 to I mean, so we were 10 to 12 guys in a video game was considered a good roster at the time. Stuff like Royal Rumble and WWF Raw in 93, 95, 94, sorry. And before that, like the very early video games, you tend to get 6 to 8 guys maybe in a video game. No creator wrestlers, no downloadable content. Yes, I'm just going to sound like a miserable bastard here. Well, I remember getting Warzone in 1998 and thinking 16 members of the roster was a big roster. And it wasn't really until Attitude in 1999 that we really got full rosters. So for the characters on WrestleMania Arcade game in 1995 were Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, Razor Ramon, Doink, Lex Luger, Yokozuna and Bam Bam Bigelow. So if you're counting along with me there, that's 8 characters. Yes, I'm completely serious. We had 8 characters on this video game. None of them which was Diesel, which was kind of bizarre, because he was the WWF champion at the time. You'd think he'd be in the video game, right? Wrong. So, yeah, that's just weird. I'm not sure exactly why that was, but it happened. There was a video game and no Diesel in there. I'm guessing maybe the game was getting produced in early to mid 1994. Maybe. That's the only thing. That's the only reason I can think of. They started producing the game in early to mid 1994 when Diesel wasn't that big of a deal. I mean, you'd think Diesel should have been there instead of Doink. I mean, if I had to take one character out to fit Diesel in, it probably would be Doink. But yeah, that's just a strange one, wasn't it? Next question's Honor Up Seriata. Who was the best WCW TV champion of 1995? Arn Anderson, I guess, pretty much by default, to be honest. Yes, Arn Anderson, I suppose. Then we got, would you dare say the IC title's more valuable than the world title in WWF that year? For certain parts, I would say yeah. I would say particularly the summer months, so like July and August for definitely. I mean, you look at the In Your House Lumberjacks, was it Lumberjacks? The second In Your House anyway, where it was Shawn Michaels and Jeff Jarrett in the WWF title match with Diesel and Sid. Definitely felt more important then. And then obviously SummerSlam, Razor versus Shawn Michaels ladder match, felt far more important than the main event of Diesel and Mabel. So I'd say for certain parts of the year, yeah, that's pretty fair comment. Most underrated pay-per-view in 1995, probably SummerSlam, which is something, like I said before, I actually think this is a good show. Not a great show, anything like that, but a good show. I mean, you had obviously the classic rematch of WrestleMania 10, the Shawn and Razor ladder match. Hakushi 1, 2, 3 Kid, that was a really good match, really good opener. Barry Horowitz and Skip was a nice little gem that they had on the card. Bret Hart versus Isaac Yankem was at least a good match. And I thought even Triple H and Bob Holly was at least a decent little mid-card match. So yeah, I'll go for SummerSlam for that one. What have we got? Here? I think WCW would have brought the cruiserweights if ECW didn't bring the Lucha style to their promotion first. Probably not, no. Not the Luchadors anyway, so not like Rey Mysterio. Say, oh, fucking hell, man. Sorry, ignore that swear word, just my phone's starting to piss me off here. My internet and it keeps cutting in and out on my phone and it's pissing me off. So, right, sorry, so the Luchadors. No, probably not like a Reign Psychosis and all that and Ultimo Dragon. But they probably would have gotten the likes of Benoit and Guerrero because they got them from the deal with New Japan. So that's kind of how Benoit and all them came in through the New Japan deal. So, yeah. Here we got. Was Brian Pillman the best in-ring performer in WCW in 1995? Maybe. Yeah, perhaps. I'm quite partial to Randy Savage, though. I feel like he had a really good year with his good matches with Ric Flair and all that. But yeah, Pillman definitely deserves to be in the conversation for that one. Then we got Greedy Selfish 97, forcing a Hulk Hogan Vader feud from earlier that year. Oh, yeah, just a massive disappointment, really, wasn't it? You're thinking when Hogan comes into WCW, obviously one of Hogan's trademarks of the WWF was fighting monster heels, and then in WCW, who fit that bill more than Vader? Nobody really. So didn't happen in '94. I mean, I'd like to think the Hogan and Vader would have made a much better Starrcade '94 main event than Hogan and the Butcher. But then, so the feud was delayed till 1995, and I just kind of feel like Hogan buried Vader a little bit in this one. Vader was not allowed to look like the monster that he was when he was facing Hogan. And Hogan was doing stuff like getting straight back from his power bombs and all that, and generally just not really making Vader look like a threat at all. So some of the matches were decent. There's some decent matches in there, like the cage match they had, whatever pay-per-view. It was at the beach pay-per-view, I think it might have been. I think it was. That was a pretty decent match. Yeah, but some of the matches were alright. It's just the fact that Hogan kind of made Vader look bad during that, to be honest with you. Wasn't good. And then fourth on Steve Austin's anti-ECW promos. Oh, great for the time. I mean, absolutely fantastic for the time. One of the first real insider promos I saw, I mean, because this is a different time. It's not like now where there's all these platforms that express your frustration on, so there's no Twitter or Facebook or anything like that, out like that. So yeah, this is so after Austin got fired from WCW, Paul Heyman offered him a job to just cut promos, and that's because he was still injured at the time when he got fired as well, which pissed him off even more. After generally being held back, and then Austin, he cut these awesome, like these really amazing promos on ECW, not on WCW, sorry, just talking about how he'd been treated and all that. And you got to think like the frustration of that, and Paul Heyman giving Austin the platform to get his feelings out there. I think he said he found himself as a character when he did that as well. I mean, I also thought Stunning Steve Austin was fine. It was good, but it wasn't really Steve Austin at all. I mean, once he found that in ECW, that helped him become Stone Cold later on. So I think these promos are definitely worth checking out if you haven't seen them. Do you think the Giant, aka Big Show, was the only good thing that caught the Dungeon of Doom angle? Yeah, oh god, yeah. If there's one positive in that angle, if there's one gem in that steaming pile of turd, it must be that, really. I mean, so yeah, the Dungeon of Doom did bring us the Giant, this young 23-year-old 7-foot monster, to the world of wrestling. And yeah, look at the Dungeon of Doom. Giant's the only one who was really successful coming out of that. So yeah, that's pretty much the only good thing. And did you watch any of the WWB/C shows like the Action Zone or Superstars? If so, were there any underrated matches in those shows you like? Yeah, that's what I was watching at the time. Obviously like early Saturday and Sunday mornings, so that sort of thing. So yeah, I was watching these shows at the time, and I can't really remember any good gems from 1995 from these shows, though, to be honest with you. Out of all the whack-ass stupid gimmicks that come out of this year, what were some of your personal favourites? I mean, I didn't really like more. I thought they were all pretty much bad, really. Didn't mind Henry Godwinn that much. Well, that was a decent enough gimmick. The Hog Farmer. I think Henry Godwinn kind of made it work. Skip wasn't too bad. Skip Sonny the Body Donners. That wasn't too bad at all. I mean, it was pretty much Simon Dean 10 years earlier. So out of all the stupid gimmicks wrestlers got during that time, that one wasn't so bad. I mean, even Hunter S. Helmsley was a pretty good gimmick, but it was better than most gimmicks that were given out that year. Although the original name, I don't know how many people know this, but the first name pitched to Triple H was Reginald DuPont Helmsley. I mean, imagine how different things would have been if he'd gotten that name, Reginald DuPont Helmsley. Ugh, terrible. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. And then we got Owen Peterson, forced on the British Bulldog turning heel. Do you think he helped his career in the long run? Oh, as a kid, I hated that. I mean, as a kid, that really upset me because British Bulldog was right behind Bret Hart as my favourite wrestler at the time. I was a big British Bulldog fan as a kid, and when he turned heel, that upset me big time. But as an adult, looking back now, I can appreciate that it was a really good heel turn. Also, like when he cut his hair as well, and had short hair for the first time in years. Just feel like, at the time, WWF needed a heel. I mean, the babyface side was actually quite heavy, if you recall. I mean, at the time, in the summer of 1995, you had Diesel, you had Bret, you had Shawn, you had Razor, you had The Undertaker. So that's 5 baby faces, and then on the heel side, you're quite lacking really with the people like Sid, Owen Hart, Yokozuna. So Bulldog turning heel, that definitely helped his career, because look what happened after that. Look the matches he had after that. I mean, he had 2 main events. I mean, he had a main event title match with Diesel in Your House Great White North, and then of course end of the year with another championship main event against Bret Hart for the world title of the season. Beans in it. Going into 1996, he had 2 pay-per-view main events with Shawn Michaels. So as a babyface, would he have done that? Probably not. So definitely feel like it did help his career. If you could swap King Mabel as the King of the Ring of 1995, swap out who would you replace him with? So I'm not sure what you mean by that. If you mean who should have won the King of the Ring 1995, I would have went with Shawn Michaels for that one. I feel like that was his time to win the King of the Ring. And I didn't really have much problem with Mabel actually being in the King of the Ring. I mean, him being in the tournament was fine. It wasn't fantastic or anything, but it was fine. No real issues from being in the tournament. It's just winning the tournament I had the big problem with. And then main event in SummerSlam with Diesel, so I would actually have no issue at all having him in the tournament. You could have easily had him in the first round of The Undertaker and have The Undertaker beat him. So honestly, Mabel in the tournament's not that bad at all. It's just the fact he won it, and I would have Shawn Michaels win that tournament instead of him. Well, I think Owen Hart was absent during the triple header match at In Your House 3. I know the answer to this one, and the answer is real simple. The reason Owen Hart was taken out of that match and he was late at the pay-per-view, only getting in for the finish, it's real simple. His wife was giving birth. It's that simple, yeah. His daughter was being born at the time, and that's why Owen missed the pay-per-view and had to fly in late. So obviously Owen was there for the birth and all that, seeing his daughter being born and all that, and then he managed to, he must have caught like a late flight to get to the show while the pay-per-view was in progress. And if you remember, he ran in for the finish, and he obviously was replaced by the British Bulldog in that match. So that is the reason why his daughter was being born. Since 1995 was the first year of WWF doing monthly pay-per-views. So the introduction of In Your House between WWF and WCW, which promotion had the better pay-per-view for each month. So I'm only going to do the pay-per-views I've seen, because I have not seen them all. Pretty much WCW pay-per-views I've reviewed in the channels are the ones I've seen. So we'll go with so obviously we have to go back to July. We had In Your House Lumberjacks versus WCW Bash at the Beach. In Your House can win that one. September we have a Fall Brawl versus Triple Header. Probably go with Fall Brawl for that one, for no other reason than having 2 great matches on there. Pillman and Johnny B. Bad, and Ric Flair and Arn Anderson, excuse me. Then October, 2 awful pay-per-views. I mean, that was fucking bad. Ugh. So Halloween Havoc versus Great White North. Oh, that's a horrible month for pay-per-view, isn't it? Like, 2 of the worst shows of the year at the same time. Fuck knows. Guess I'll go Great White North, barely. But they were both absolutely atrocious. Then, of course, November's an easy one. I actually haven't seen World War 3, but I'm going to pretty much assume it wasn't as good as Survivor Series. In the last one, of course, In Your House Seasons Beatings versus Starcade. Starcade wins that one every time. That was a really good show. There we go. Thoughts on the Ric Flair Randy Savage feud as opposed to the WF feud 1992. I thought that was one of the best things about WCW 1995. The Ric Flair Randy Savage feud. So just a really solid rivalry between two good veterans who could still go. I mean, obviously it wasn't like Ric Flair and Randy Savage in the prime, but they were still having pretty good matches. I mean, they did some good stuff in there, like having Ric Flair attacked Randy Savage's old father, Angela Poffo. That was really good angle at the time. Then you had, I believe they wrestled at the I think they wrestled at the Great American Bash, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure they were both part of, when Hogan, tag match of Hogan and Vader at like Slamboree or something, I think. Then they had the lifeguard match at the Bash at the Beach. Most of the matches, I would say the WF feud was better. But obviously with the whole going to WrestleMania 8 thing, Ric Flair's a world champion. Doing the stuff where he claimed he had Elizabeth before Savage and stuff like that. So I'd say the 1992 WF feud was better. But this is a really good feud as well. And then, next question, we got Albert Butler. Did you watch the Super J Cup from Japan that year? Yes, but I haven't seen it. I watched it once in like about 2008 or something like that. Really good show from what I recall. Like excellent show actually. So from what I remember, we had a first ever meeting between Chris Benoit and Chris Jericho, or Wild Pegasus versus Lionheart. That was an awesome match actually. I mean, I've seen that match more than once. But yeah, that was great stuff. What have we got? Ultimo Dragon Jushin Liger was an awesome match if I remember rightly. Obviously that was one where it was Liger and Jado in the final, where Jado did Liger win the tournament? I think he did. I think Liger won. Then there was this great match on the undercard actually, Rey Mysterio and Psychosis, just a showcase of luchador wrestling, just going crazy. It's pretty good stuff. Who was the most underrated wrestler? Underrated wrestler in 1995? That's a good question. Maybe Johnny B. Bad for that one. Mark Mero. I mean, he actually had this was a year I think where throughout 94 to 1995, Johnny B. Bad had actually quite improved and became a pretty good worker. I mean, he was having those matches with DDP in late 1995. Had an awesome match with Brian Pillman, the Fall Brawl, which we're going to get into in a sec actually. So I'll say probably that. Then besides Lex Luger and Medusa, which debuts from any company shocked you? Can't really think of any, to be honest. I think those were the real shocking debuts. Doing the WWF side, I can't really think of anything at all. I think in WCW, what else? I can't remember who else debuted apart from those two. Really, those were the first big jump ships in the Monday Night War, weren't they? Luger and Medusa / Alundra Blaze. So yeah, I can't really think of anything else, to be honest with you. There you go. What do you think of the Arn Anderson Ric Flair feud? Oh, loved that feud. Thought that feud was fantastic. Probably one of the cooler things that happened in WCW that year, or all the wrestling that year, to be fair. So, for years and years and years, Ric Flair and Arn Anderson were friends. They were both in the Horsemen and all that. And it was cool. And then 1995 comes around, there starts to come in tension between Arn Anderson and Ric Flair. Seems like Ric Flair's taken the enforcer Arn Anderson for granted. At a certain point, Arn Anderson's taking a step back, not helping Flair as much. Then they start feuding. I mean, this is cool because one thing you didn't think you'd see is Ric Flair and Arn Anderson fighting each other. And it was an awesome opportunity for Arn as well, because for most of his career, Arn Anderson was a tag team wrestler, and an excellent tag team wrestler at that. I mean, look at the teams he was in. Him and Ole, the Minnesota Wrecking Crew, Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard. Even Arn Anderson, Larry Zbyszko, the Enforcers in the early 90s. And yeah, generally he was always Ric Flair's lackey for the most part. So it's cool to see them actually wrestle. And they did it in Carolina as well. Was it Asheville? possibly, it might have been Ash. I think it was Asheville that they wrestled in. So yeah, they actually got to wrestle on a pay-per-view in the Carolinas, where obviously Ric Flair and Arn, and particularly Flair, but Arn as well, both big stars, going back to the Jim Crockett promotion days, the NWA days. Then they had that match at Fall Brawl, and I thought that was a great match, actually. Really enjoyed that match, just a nice story. Probably the best singles match I've ever seen Arn Anderson have. And a great match for Flair at the time. Of 1995, Ric Flair wasn't the man anymore. But when he wanted to, and when the time was right, he could still have a great match. And he certainly did here. And that, of course, led the thing I was talking about before in the Halloween Havoc review, where him and Sting teamed up to face Arn and Brian Pillman. That, of course, led the Flair swerve turn on Sting, reformed the Four Horsemen. Well, while we're on the subject, I thought that Four Horsemen was pretty awesome, actually. Of Flair, Arn, Pillman, and Chris Benoit. So yeah, and then last set of questions. Not a pretty short video today, actually, less than an hour. We've got Jay Shepherdson. Thoughts on Halloween Havoc? Well, ironically enough, after you sent this question, I reviewed the show and put it on my channel like a couple of days ago. So if you haven't seen the video, go back and watch it, basically. Then, what match was worse? Joe Hogan versus Giant Monster Truck sumo match, or King Mabel versus King Mabel versus Diesel? Well, you can't really compare them, to be honest. It's very much an apples and oranges kind of thing for me, anyway. Yeah, I just feel like you can't really compare them, because one was a monster truck sumo thing and one was a wrestler match. So, two totally different things. But King Mabel vs Diesel has to be worse, mainly based on the fact that this was your pay-per-view for your second biggest show of the year, and that's what you came up with, Diesel versus Mabel. Yeah, that was just embarrassing, really, looking back now, all these years later. I mean, that was a SummerSlam main event. I mean, really. I mean, you can rag on the WWE now, but they don't dare put a pay-per-view main event like this on pay-per-view now, or they get fucking shit on, wouldn't they, really? Then, would you say 1995 is the worst year in wrestling history? Yes, definitely from all around the board. I mean, from the WWF and WCW for the most part. I mean, WCW got better on later on when they launched Nitro and shit like that, but obviously WWF terrible, WCW not much better really. Then you had ECW doing well, but that was very much small time underground stuff. I mean, so yeah, I think definitely 1995 is probably definitely the worst year. Then we got top 5 WCW matches of the year. So, number 1, Brian Pillman versus Johnny B. Bad from Fall Brawl. And I think it's like a 30-minute opener or something, or maybe a little bit less. Because I think it went to a time limit of 20 minutes, then did a 5-minute overtime, and got a time limit again, and after that Pillman won the match. So, yeah, fantastic opener between two good workers. Number 2, Starrcade 1995, a triangle match, Ric Flair versus Sting versus Lex Luger. This match is pretty awesome, actually. 3 stars from the 80s, wrestling each other in 1995, and this was one of the first like 3-way matches that the mainstream company ever did. So yeah, obviously it's a little bit different in the sense that you had to tag in and out and all that, and it was elimination, but it was a great match, excellent match actually. Then number 3, Arn Anderson versus Ric Flair from Fall Brawl. Love that match. That was a great match, really great match. Then for 4, Eddie Guerrero and Shinjiro Otani from Starrcade. That was a fantastic match, one of Eddie's first great matches in WCW. Then number 5 will go with Flair Savage from Great American Bash. That was an excellent match, I thought. Then WWF. Obviously number 1, not even up for debate. Razor Ramon versus Shawn Michaels ladder match of SummerSlam. Not as good as a WrestleMania match, but still awesome match all round there. Number 2, Bret Hart versus Diesel from Survivor Series. That was fucking awesome. I love that match. Just a great story. One of the first real no holds barred matches in the company's history on pay-per-view. Love that match. Then we got Bret Hart versus the British Bulldog from In Your House Seasons Beaten. That's a real gem of a match. I mean, people definitely need to see that match. I mean, it's a totally different match from the SummerSlam 1992 match. I mean, obviously, different story with heel Davey versus face Bret this time. Bret Hart bleeds during the match. It's a great way to end the year. Then, number 4, Shawn Michaels, Jeff Jarrett from In Your House. The Lumberjacks. Awesome match. One of Jeff Jarrett's best ever match. Even one of Shawn Michaels' more forgotten classics. I mean, obviously Shawn Michaels over the years amassed a collection of classic matches. That one definitely gets overlooked and definitely should be seen. And number 5, Bret Hart versus Diesel from the Royal Rumble. I mean, the second match in the pay-per-view trilogy. Awesome match. Maybe the finish wasn't so good. I mean, even as a Bret Hart fan, I have to admit they probably should have just had Diesel go over Bret clean. That would have made sense, but they did. To protect both guys, it's an awful double DQ with a load of heels running in and all that. So yeah, and that's a wrap, guys, for this video. That's Wrestling 1995. Like I said in the intro, next one will be Wrestling in 2017, which might leave that for a couple of weeks before putting the announcement up. I mean, it's the 1st of November now, so probably about 2 weeks or so I'll put the announcement up, and then obviously you can ask the questions there, and I'll probably do the video early December probably, and that's a wrap, guys. So I'm out for now, guys, and peace.